This is the GPL podcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
You're younger than my dad.
Oh,
My dad's 50. My dad's 56.
you're younger than my dad. Yeah, that makes me
Wow, we just got finished.
That sounds kind of weird.
Kind of sounds weird. It's not like 99 Nittany Lions.
And Eric, on the flip side, I bet you just love those defensive games.
Yeah, if I'm playing, well, I was the same as you, Drew. If I fell asleep on Saturday,
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 248. Well, hello, Vigs. Hopefully you had a great weekend this past weekend.
Yeah, it was great. I love it when Minnesota plays Minnesota Duluth. You know, the Gophers have not had the best record against the Bulldogs the last decade, but the hockey is always pretty good. And I thought the Gophers played a great game on Friday. Saturday, I thought they were the better team. And, it kind of erased some of the woes from watching the Gophers-Illinois football game because that was a disappointment.
Oh, boy, I was at Old Chicago in Canal Park watching that ending, and you could just see it coming. I think I even tweeted a big
It was a gut puncher. It was a total gut puncher. It was one of those games where the football program, I think, finally has a lot of athletes who are at a high level, and they just made some mental mistakes, and it cost them. But the Gophers this weekend, I think, had a lot of growth on the hockey rink.
I would agree. I want to discuss kind of a lot of things, with this whole weekend, but obviously the home and home, cool things happening with that, with the contract coming up. But Friday, they came out and looked pretty darn good. And players were actually benched for taking penalties. It was quite the interesting evening.
Well, Bob typically has one of the least penalized teams in college hockey. And it's not because his teams aren't physical and aggressive. I think it's because the coach puts such an emphasis. If you take bad penalties, and what a bad penalty is in Moscow's mind is something in the offensive zone when you're 180 feet away from your own goal, or something where you're just sticking your stick in the wrong spot and getting called for penalties. He does not have a lot of patience for that. And he had said, the weekend before, I'm either going to bring out the 2x4 or the tickle feather. And he brought out the 2x4. And now that these penalties are starting to add up, he brought it out again and started stapling people to the bench.
And he called out a few different people. One of them who also got 2 goals that night.
Bryce Brudzinski reacted very well to the benching and responding for the coach. Although one of them is an empty netter where he must have had the speed jets saved up for that one.
Yeah, I did you even ask? I think you asked somebody asked Moscow about that. How he's all of a sudden he's really fast when it comes to empty net goals.
Yep, the coaching staff sure knows that. And Mike Kester made the comment. He's like, well, he just wants to ice the game for us.
That's
true. He just really wants to ice the game. It's good for Bryce. So it's his 50th career goal with the Gophers. He is probably one guy who attracts a lot of negative commentary from the fan base when you're watching a hockey game, but he knows how to put the puck in the net.
He's up and down during the season, almost every season. He has spurts where all of a sudden he's scoring. He's got 5 goals in 6 games or something on that, and then he's quiet for another 6 games. So I think some of the criticism might be fair. I think honestly, we just want to see consistency out of his game.
Yeah, and I think he's a player who recognizes that a little bit, and he wants to make himself a more complete player. He definitely put in the work this offseason to get a little fitter and have a little more jump. And when I've noticed plays during the games where I see him have that extra step that he probably hasn't had since he's been at Minnesota, I'll call it out on Twitter because it's there and it shows up in the games. And Rhett Pitlick is another player who's starting to show that little bit of extra heaviness and jump on the ice that's creating opportunities for him as well. So you've got two players who've been with the program for a while, and there's signs that they are becoming more complete players this year.
Pitlick causes havoc out there. I've been saying it the entire season. You've been telling me, look at him, look how aggressive he is on the forecheck, the trouble he's causing. Doesn't always get the puck, but he slows him down, and sometimes he does get the puck. But I think the important thing on Friday night is that he got off the schneid and got on the scoreboard.
Well, he was one of those players that got benched. And I was trying to figure out what was happening with the Lions because Bob had said throughout the week he's warning everybody, hey, I'm going to be juggling the lines all year. You're probably going to see more combinations than usual on Friday. And I had made the comment after the game. I was like, well, you certainly kept your word. You were juggling the lines. And he revealed that he was benching guys because of penalties. And Pitlick was one of those guys, too, who got benched for penalties. You know, he came in the neutral zone with some back pressure. He put his stick into the player's hands. Tight call, but it's a call. And then he's out there with, I think, Jimmy Clark and Charlie Strobel. And I was like, wow, those three look pretty good together. And it resulted in Pitlick getting a goal. So
on a nice setup by Strobel, too. Yes, that was a great all-around play.
Yeah, definitely a great play. And it's good to see Pitlick put one in the net because I think that's good for his confidence because he's a player that I think needs confidence to be effective, just so he takes that extra beat to really finish a play and not just be quick and get pucks off. Because I think there's a little bit more of a scorer's touch to his game because he's got so much skill.
What did you think of Close? Almost got the shutout Friday night.
I think Mike Kester probably came to his locker after the game and said, sorry about that. Minnesota had, I feel like, only gave one or two odd man rushes the entire game. And it was late.
They went a long time without allowing a shot.
Yeah. And it was late in the game, and Kester kind of dove into the slot to try to make a play and just couldn't finish it. And UMD came back 4-on-2 the other way. Minnesota probably didn't play the rush exactly well. Sometimes you just want to give closer a clean look at the rush shooter like they can sometimes do, but they didn't. And UMD took advantage and ruined the shutout, which was kind of disappointing, I think, for closer, but he's the kind of guy that doesn't care about shutouts. And I think that's the reason why he has so many of them. But overall, a great night for Minnesota. You could just tell Scott Sandelin after the game was frustrated with his team, with their effort and discipline.
I noticed that. I shot, I believe, the second period between the benches, and I noticed that he was frustrated with his team and what they were doing. But part of that was getting Mr. Kester back, Viggs. I just noticed a comment. Our guy Mote looked rusty. Well, I hope so. He hadn't played all season, but he still played pretty darn good.
Well, I think his return to the lineup was a calming one, especially on the power play. You just look, he knows how to settle the puck and not put it right into pressure. He knows how to take that pressure off everybody else and give a little bit of time and space to think and make some skill plays. It seems sometimes the Gopher power play has been rushing quite a bit and just kind of getting the motions and static and not moving around and not being dynamic and not creating chaos. Kester is the anti-chaos guy. He calms things down, has the vision to make plays, and I think that helps for Minnesota, especially on the breakout as well. He's a player that can make calm plays, but I think the rust when he has to press in traffic with body contact is going to be something that's going to come along maybe a little more slowly than he'd like.
Very Faber-like, because I've been seeing Faber doing a lot of that calmness type of play for the Wild.
Well, he's just always is on the right side of the puck. He knows how to position his body so he doesn't get beat. I was talking to somebody, Mike Grimm, today after media availability.
Okay.
How the Gophers right now sometimes are taking the cheese, to use the football analogy. You're getting caught going to the outside like Tyler Newman was at the end of the Illinois game. You do something because you're trying to make a play and you want to flash your skill, when really the smart thing is just to let all that stuff go and make the easy play and slow the game down and don't give away chances to the other team. Kester is that kind of player. He's experienced enough and savvy enough to play the percentage plays and then just calmly transition the other way. Brock Faber was so good about that. He's obviously a heavier player who can be more physical, but as long as your body position is in the right spot, you can shut down plays and transition quick.
But a great first weekend back, definitely for Mr. Kester.
I think so too. And it helped everybody's ice time.
Mm-hmm.
Chesley wasn't out there playing 27, 30 minutes. Middlestat wasn't out there trying to do too much. I think Rinzel is learning not to touch the stove. It did happen a couple times during the weekend where he tries to go coast to coast and he ends up below the goal line. That's probably not where you want your players to go.
No.
You want them to do it more like Cal Thomas on his goal, where he sees 4 opponents in front of him and a chance for a loose puck, and he goes, okay, now I can go. That's an opportunity where offense is presented to you and you take it and you get your goal. When you start chasing plays like Kester did at the end of the game on Friday, or Rinzel has been doing this season, you're giving the other team some offense that they haven't really earned.
So 5-1 win Friday night, well-deserved. Saturday night up in Duluth, definitely much more hostile atmosphere. Duluth gets a lead, goes back and forth. They go up 2-1. Minnesota ties it at 2. They got 2 quick ones to go up 3-2 at the end of the second. And then I think a penalty by I can't remember. At the end of the second period, that ended up with a power play goal to tie the game for Duluth. But Minnesota had 50 shots on goal. Their goalie did definitely have an excellent game against Minnesota.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because the UMD goalie had cramps on Friday night, and that was the reason why he left the game. It wasn't like a groin or a knee injury. It was cramps. And so they went with the other guy, Thiessen, on Saturday, and he played very, very well. I thought the Gophers outchanced UMD throughout the night. I don't know if they were as in control of the game, clearly, but they were getting the better of the chances. And the only reason that game went to overtime was because UMD's goalie played really, really well. He was aggressive. He was reading plays. He was making big pushes. And so I think that was the difference on Saturday.
And didn't start well in the overtime, taking a penalty right at the end of regulation. That wasn't good. And then Minnesota gets a power play. It was hectic. Ends up at a tie. Both teams had good chances. Minnesota had some great chances. Then for some reason, I must have been only for the crowd, Vigs, they did a shootout. I sent a text right away to the SID Minnesota, Scott Slarks. I go, why are they doing this? He's like, literally his response, no clue.
Well, I think everybody is doing this in the non-conference games. It has no meaning,
no bearing
in pairwise, records, anything. It's just something for the crowd. UMD obviously won it, so they were happy. Minnesota lost it, so maybe they're less happy, but really it didn't mean anything in the big picture because the Gophers won the series overall.
I had to explain to somebody, that a Gopher fan, that shootouts never make a difference when it comes to NCAA or pairwise, especially this past weekend. It was essentially, if you call it a 2-point weekend, Minnesota got 1.5 and Duluth got a 0.5 point. I mean, in that way, if you're just thinking straight up math. But shootouts don't mean anything. The only time they mean something is conference standings, Vigs. But after those, that 3-on-3, 5 minutes is done, the NCAA does not care, do they?
I'm just kind of waiting for a road team to just go to their locker room at the end of overtime and not even participate in the shootout and just say, you won the shootout. I kind of would expect a guy like Motzko to do that if shootouts are still a thing in these non-conference games when they don't mean anything.
Closer did quite the stretch on that first save and ended up, I think he hit the pipe or something with his skate, and his whole blade just fell right off. Excuse me. And then I was talking to somebody. He's like, "Well, could they just replace Bud and put another goalie in?" I'm like, you cannot put a goalie in switching at that time. There's no warm up. There's nothing, and that's the time when the goalie's probably the most spry and flexible. He might be tired, but he's stretched out. You couldn't throw a goalie in for a shootout and expect any good results.
Yeah, especially Minnesota. Aries not cleared really to play games yet. He's working his way back from his injury that held him out of the preseason, so he's not quite ready. Who knows what would happen there. I think the thing going forward is I'm looking for a coach one day to just take their team to the locker room afterwards.
They could.
Because it's a letdown when you lose the shootout. You got a tie on the road. You won the series. And I think if you lose the shootout and the crowd gets up, you kind of feel upset that let my team down and let their fans get some energy.
The kids behind us were screaming that high-pitched shrill like they just won the Stanley Cup. It was brutal. And the crowd was so excited. They jumped all over the goalie. I'm like, we shouldn't even had one, because the last time Minnesota was in Duluth, Viggs, I believe was 2018. I think it might have been ice where it was a one-game thing. Duluth had just won a national title. They put the banner up, 1-1 tie, overtime. That was it. There was no shootout. It was pointless at the time. But like you said, some teams they're like, let's just do it anyway, just for the crowd. I'm like, I couldn't imagine if a goalie got a hamstring or pulled a groin trying to make an acrobatic save in a meaningless non-conference shootout.
It's an interesting scenario that I don't think people have really put a lot of time and thought into, but maybe something that'll get changed. Maybe we'll have to tell Eric Martinson at some point that this should be a rule, because it is a rule change year. I know that there was an interesting rule change suggestion about coach's challenge in the Michigan-Wisconsin game that cost the Wolverines the other night. So interesting things in college hockey, but overall, really good weekend for Minnesota. I thought they got good effort from all their lines. Now, Bob on Friday was talking about the effective ground game that he had out there throughout the night. I didn't quite feel like they had the great ground game. There were a lot of missed shots in the second and third period that were feeding transition chances for UMD. I feel like if you had a really good ground game, they wouldn't have been messing around with that. They would have had more traffic to the net. That was something Jimmy Snuggerud talked about from the weekend, is the coaches were basically showing all these shots, like on Saturday, 50 shots, and probably 40 of them, there was no traffic in front of the goalie. Yeah. You need to create that chaos. On one of the goals this weekend, Snuggerud was the player doing the center drive, creating the space for his line mates to get the goal. So he's getting it. I think his shifts were a little shorter throughout the weekend. He wasn't out there seeking offense quite as much as he was maybe early in the season. So I think that's a promising thing for Minnesota. And of course, having the blue line back together was a big deal.
Well, I definitely want to get into Snuggerud and more with the UMD contract. But one thing we need to do, we've got sponsors now, Viggs. And one of my favorites is the Further Fundraisers. They're doing a lot for small organizations like your kids' youth hockey.
Yeah, Wayne from Further Fundraisers will set you up. He'll try to make it as easy as you can for fundraising, with staff planning your needs, supporting you from start to finish, and maximizing your return while staying close to retail prices. No one likes buying super overpriced fundraiser stuff and not seeing the value. Ferda tries to do a nice job with that with their pricing. They've got a lot of local premium products like Joe Mama Salsa that we both enjoy, Von Hansen's pretzel snacks, Croy Valley barbecue rubs and sauces. They've got some new cocktail mixer things that you can get. I just saw they had the freeze-dried candy that they added to their mix, along with some caramel corn and stuff. Yeah. So it's great stuff. So visit ferdafundraisers.com to ignite your fundraising for the boys, for the girls, for the community, for the fundraisers.
Definitely love the Furta fundraisers. But now we need to hear from our other sponsors, Chill Boys.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I've been part of the ball crew at numerous tennis events for years. They say I'm an excellent ball handler. It's my job to get loose balls where they're supposed to be, to make the players comfortable, so they can focus on the task at hand, winning. Which is why I recommend Chill Boys life-changing bamboo boxers and boxer briefs. Chill Boys, comfort where it counts.
I just love that commercial, Vigs. It's funny. It's great how they got him to do all that stuff with the tennis stuff. That's why I love playing it. Had my Chill Boys on Saturday as I went up to Duluth because I knew I'd be doing a lot of walking, a lot of moving around. It worked great. Of course, everyone can use pull tab 15 to get that 15% off. It's a pretty good deal.
I know that the stat crew at Mariucci has been excited about Chill Boys because they're under a lot of pressure up there.
Oh, yes.
And they, get a lot of animosity about their work, and they're excited about that bamboo comfort.
They definitely are. So use that pull tab 15 for 15% off your order, folks. It's a lot of good stuff there, so make sure you take advantage of it. All right, Meeks. I was talking about Snuggerud a little bit there before we went to commercial, and you have taught me over the years to look for things. I love how you've done that. And the first thing I noticed Saturday in Duluth, wait a minute, Snuggerud's on the right side for the power play. Oh, he's sometimes moving up to the point. Wait, okay, now he's back in position. Oh, wait a minute. Snuggerud was moving around quite a bit on the power play Saturday night. Not in his normal left side spot.
When you have a player like Snuggerud who becomes a focal point for your power play, you don't want to be very predictable. And so giving him the freedom and practicing, giving him different routes to go through on the power play to get shooting opportunities is going to be crucial for Minnesota, because I think Bob wants to go with his top guys as much as he can on the power play. We've seen that over the years. When he gets a unit that gets confident, he's not afraid to let them go out there for 90 seconds if they can maintain the zone, apply pressure, get second chances, and tire out a penalty kill. So I think Minnesota, when they were just putting Snuggerud in one spot, was getting too predictable, and teams were taking that away, and the Gophers are trying to force the puck to him. So by having him move around a little bit should create some different opportunities for him. And I think also get Snuggerud into the mix of being creative, because when you're creative, you create chaos, you're unpredictable, and you can really surprise people. So I think to get Snuggerud going on the power play, that's going to be important.
Well, like I said, one thing I noticed, I'm like, what? He's on the right side. Oh, wait, now he's up the point. And then him and Kester were switching. They kind of went back and forth a couple times. And I like that. Wasn't successful yet, but it's definitely the variety that they need.
Well, I think in having a guy like Kester out there who's experienced and calm allows that to happen as well, because he has enough experience on the power play that he can play different spots and is comfortable adjusting. You get some guys that are like, this is my spot. This is where I line up. This is what I do. You can't do that and be successful all the time. So I think as the season goes on, that is definitely something to watch for. I usually like my shooters to shoot and be on the flanks and be ready for that one-timer, but they have to be able to move around a little bit, sometimes with that QB up top, sometimes with that bumper in the middle, depending on what hand they are, to create those chances.
So that was one thing I noticed. Thanks to your teachings, Ziggs. Thanks to your teachings. But one thing I did hear this weekend when I was actually talking with our guy, Bruce Siski, and he told us this Friday night that a new 4-year contract's going to be, and it's going to be home all weekend the next 4 years. So you've got in Duluth next year, in Minneapolis the year after, in Duluth. So full 2-game series. And then I think it got let out on Saturday at some point. But For you and I who love that Duluth trip and have done it many times, prefer the long weekend, it's coming back next season.
And I think it's great. You talk to the players, they got to Duluth at about 1 a.m.
You see, I didn't even realize they left. I figured they'd sleep in and maybe go up in the morning. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I mean, Siskel, the goalie for UMD, got left behind on Friday night because Sandelin wanted to get his team back to Duluth so quickly. And so I think that turnaround is tough for everybody. It doesn't create the best hockey. I'm not saying that's why the Gophers weren't able to finish on all their opportunities they had Saturday, but you might have seen a better game from both teams had they gotten a normal weekend of hockey in. And I think it's great for the town. The bars and restaurants and hotels, when people go up, I think it's great for the crowd to be the same Friday and Saturday. I think Minnesota had a great crowd Friday night. It was the second biggest crowd in Mariucci Arena history with attendance. We'll find out later what the actual attendance was. There are a lot of empty seats, but they sold a lot of tickets. They sold a lot of tickets for it.
Correct.
But I think it's going to be great for them to do that. 2 games in the same city going forward. And I just think when I look at non-conference schedules for Minnesota, it's so critical for them to play Minnesota, Duluth, and North Dakota as often as they can, because I think these 3 fan bases probably travel the best out of the schools in the state. St. Thomas looks like they could travel pretty well to excel in Mariucci. And Bob says
not the same though.
Bob says that's his favorite road trip already because he's in bed pretty quick. But I think having Minnesota, Duluth, and North Dakota in these 4-year cycles where they play 2 games at each place are going to be great for both programs and the fans.
Well, I'm definitely going to love it because I did notice after the game Saturday night, Canal Park seemed a little quiet, but I think some of that had to do with Grandma Sports Garden is no longer the place to go pre and post game. And it's
what was your weekend like up in Duluth? Because you were there Saturday. What was the crowd like?
The crowd was good. I know there's a lot of knowledgeable Duluth fans, but the ones that were around us were just dumb as rocks. It was almost as if I went to Madison and then we just had some really maybe it's just because that's the damn seats I buy, and I buy in the dumb section. I don't know. Got up there, did the walk. The river, the lake walk is now built up. Now they've really rebuilt it. Very robust, huge boulders. So that's a good thing. See, I always got to walk around, go down to the pier and see the bridge and whatever. And ended up having we did go into, was it Vikra?
Vikra, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little busy, so we just kind of stopped in real quick. I just looked around real quick, and it was a little busy, so we went down to Old Chicago, got into Old Chicago, and then we could watch the end of the Gopher football game. So that was fun. And then we just went back to the hotel room. I switched out my jacket and walked to the game. So it really wasn't that big pregame thing. Like we're kind of used to, people kind of end up at the sports garden right before you go over. Afterwards, we went to the curling club for a little bit. They kicked us out. Obviously, no gardens, so we went to. I think we went to an Angie's, something kind of Mexican place.
Yeah, Little Angie's.
Because they were, that's the place. We went there, and just because they were still open, they're like, well, the food's gone. We're like, we just want some big ass margaritas. So we did. But it was different. Like I said, I didn't, even walking back, it was just after midnight. There's been times in the past weeks where there's people all around. There was not many people in Canal Park at midnight when there would usually be a lot of people. So that part was a little disappointing for me.
Well, maybe with the 2 games next year, there'll be more Minnesota fans on vacation for the weekend and making a big event out of it. When we were up in Grand Forks, people were out pretty late every night.
Yes.
For that weekend. It was a big deal. So I hope that returns.
Yeah, and I actually, some people say I won't go to Grand Forks anymore. I think we just got a good experience because we were there as media. So we get the good parking spot. We talked to the more normal hockey people. We didn't have to go sit with the crazies, as people might say. So I would say that was one of the best Grand Forks trips I ever had, Veeks.
Yeah, I think the people out though were all pretty even-handed with everything.
Yeah,
so
they
that was fine, I thought.
Don't be a jerk and you won't get treated like one for the most part. It's kind of how it is.
A good lesson in my 20s.
I still have that photo of you in Duluth just doing this as you won a jersey, won the Molson Canada jersey, didn't you?
Yeah, they did like a floor hockey shootout where you had to pick the corners. Yeah. I gotta tell you, when I can set my feet and pick a corner with all the time in the world, I can handle that. So I came through under pressure in the Garden, in the big crowd, in the Gopher gear.
Veeks, a couple new recruits. I can't remember if we talked about one last week. Most of them are all previous, I would say, had previously said they were going somewhere else. And it's getting a little tricky. I'm not sure how all that works. I would say 10 years ago, a verbal was usually pretty good. We did see kid going back on it. We're seeing it a lot more often now.
Which is interesting because we were supposed to back up recruiting so that kids weren't committing until they were older, so that they maybe had a better idea of where they're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're seeing right now is we're seeing some late movement. Minnesota had Leo Grubo sign his national letter of intent today as part of the Fargo Force kids who announced that. He was with St. Cloud. We talked about that a lot last week. He'll be a 20-year-old freshman for the Gophers next year. I think we're expecting Paulson to sign his NLI here pretty soon, or it's probably in process. Just so everyone knows, today's the day that players can first sign their national letters of intent. Because of junior hockey and the way it works, they have to get signatures from the player and the parents, and then it has to be processed by the school. So typically like signing day for basketball or football, those things all happen very, very quickly. So they can announce it almost the same day, same morning. For football, they start announcing them at like 6 a.m. Yeah. And usually the classes are all announced by noon. Hockey's totally different because of the way the signature train has to work. I don't know why they can't just use DocuSign and do it electronically, but that's just not the way the college hockey world works. But Gruba's one who's been announced by Fargo. Minnesota won't be able to announce it until probably tomorrow.
A kid from Minnetonka, I think, signed today too, didn't he?
Well, Javon Moore is at Minnetonka, and he just had a recognition ceremony at Minnetonka.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't an official thing.
He didn't officially sign his NLI because when you sign that paper, it means that you are intending to go to campus the next season, and the team is ready to have you come to campus the next season.
Okay.
So every once in a while, like with Mason Nevers or Beckett Hendrickson, we've seen players sign and then delay their enrollment. That's the player choosing, I think I want to come a year later. I just want to get this signed now.
Okay.
So I'm not continually being recruited by other teams, because once you sign that NLI, they can't recruit you legally. So it can quiet things down for them. But I'm expecting Paulson to sign pretty soon for Dubuque. He's the European player. I think we'll see this August Falloon, who is a 3-year player who was committed to Arizona State, decommitted yesterday.
Yes.
Announced his commitment to Minnesota today. He'll be a 20-year-old freshman next year for Minnesota. So it's really interesting to have those older players flipping to Minnesota.
That's what you were kind of talking about. That's kind of what Bob's been wanting to do for a long time. And you that was one of your kind of big tweets today, I thought, was saying Minnesota's might actually be getting older.
Yeah, finally. Bob on his first day said, I want to get older, but it's not going to happen today. And he brought in a bunch of players early. And we've seen it with Brody Lamb and Jimmy Clark come to campus maybe a little bit before they're ready. I think it probably affected Brody Lamb last year quite a bit. He was still coming up to speed with the pace of college hockey. Yes. I don't think Jimmy Clark has had as big of an adjustment period. I think he just gets it a little bit better. And so he's smoothly transitioned. But when you're a program like Minnesota, you shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to, pick some kids late from other programs if you want them. I've heard coaches say, it's not me calling the kids, it's the kids' advisors calling me, saying, hey, this kid's thinking he maybe wants to change up where he's going. Are you interested? And then it goes from there. And Falloon's not Pat's kid. He's a St. Cloud guy. He went to high school there, and now he's played 3 years in Tri-City. No relation to the San Jose Shark.
He's a Max Rude guy.
Yep, they're buddies growing up.
Mm-hmm.
St. Cloud.
Saw those photos today. So interesting.
But then I think we'll see a couple of kids from the development program sign after the U17 or the U18 stuff gets wrapped up. The US NDP almost never announces those kids signing their NLIs during the tournaments. They wait till after. So you'll see, these 2 or 3 being announced here pretty soon, and then another 2 probably later next week announced. And then we're still expecting Bartoskevich to come in next year as well.
All right, Vigs, we need to talk about Unreal, and I'm pretty excited about them because they've been putting out a lot of great stuff lately. A lot of great Viking stuff, but just great stuff all around.
Yeah, I mean, I love it that we kind of have our own Under Armour here in Minnesota. Michael E. Jordan's from here. He wanted to build a legacy here, and you see some of the partnerships he's having with, Adam Thielen and Row the Boat and the Vikings, and it's just cool stuff. He did a lot of stuff with the NCHC early on. Maybe we'll start seeing some Gopher gear at some point, but as an independent local clothing company, they're able to craft everything around the athlete. Release fresh looks, hottest drops. They donate 10% of all profits to organizations and worthy causes in the community. I love that aspect about them. Visit unreal.co, that's a code.com, and use the promo code PULLTAB15 for 15% off your order. And if you're a Vikings guy, sign up for their alerts for their drops. They do these special release things for the Vikings. And if you sign up for that, you get a text and you'll know when to buy it as soon as it gets released.
The Viking stuff's pretty good. I'm not as big as a fan of Vikings as they used to be, but man, I've been liking really kind of yellow gold stuff they had come out just late last week or something like that. Just love it.
They did 3 different colors last week in their latest drop, so that was cool stuff.
Definitely some cool stuff. And who I gotta say, Duke Cannon last week, they got me all set up for the weekend up in Duluth. I got all my hair up and ready. Smelled good, felt good. I'm glad that you showed me the way with Duke Cannon.
Just get that Mr. Miyagi. Get that Mr. Miyagi going. Get that putty hot.
Oh, definitely love how you did that for me. I'm glad they're on board with us because it definitely fits me pretty well.
Well, if you're into hockey and you have hockey hair, you got to make it a weapon. So look for Duke Cannon.
But that's just it. I don't have the hockey hair, but it gives me my.
You get some structure to it. You can get some flow.
I do get some. Well, I don't have the length like you have had in the past, but
yeah, I mean it's slowly coming in. It's early in November. We're just getting through that first part of the non-conference schedule, and the flow will come in by the time we get to the World Junior time.
It definitely will, and thanks to Duke Cannon as one of our sponsors. I'm really glad we have them on board, and I'm really glad that I learned how to use that stuff, Vigs, because that's some powerful stuff. I use the news anchor stuff, as you can see from one of my tweets late last week. All right, Vigs. Is Michigan going to be mad because Wisconsin, obviously, Wisconsin's cleaning up so far. They're way ahead in the league. There could be number 1 in the country real quick here. Got 2 late wins against Michigan last weekend in Madison. Michigan did lose a player for the rest of the season, which is you just hate to see that.
Local kid too from Minnesota. Yeah, Jackson Allen.
But Michigan's always one of my favorite weekends of the year, home or away.
Well, it should be a fun series because usually Michigan and Minnesota want to run and gun with each other a little bit, and you're going to see more transition hockey. The Gophers, I don't think have been able to do that as much against Duluth and Wisconsin and North Dakota because those teams play such structure. So when you go and play Michigan, these teams just can't help themselves. They want to show off their skill. They want to show off the flash. They want to get in transition. And all these players on these teams are usually a little bit younger, but high talent. And Michigan, while they've lost some big names over the last couple of years, McGroarty's pretty good. Brindley's pretty good. And Nazar's pretty good. We didn't see Nazar really much last year. So they've got some good talent there. I think their goaltending could be a little suspect this season. I don't know. I wouldn't call it a strong point for them. And so I think this is a weekend where there's going to be quite a few goals.
Was it you that I saw? Maybe you were talking on Twitter how Michigan might try to see what Wisconsin did against Minnesota and actually what did against themselves as kind of the way to beat Minnesota.
I mean, it could be if you can play that disciplined. That wasn't me bringing that up, but I mean that is a way
somewhere. Somebody was
that is a way to that is a way to take care of Minnesota. But I feel like Minnesota has enough experience where they're not going to fall for that. I think the first couple of years of the Motzko era, there were still too many players who were trying to do too much at the blue lines. You're not seeing that out of the Gophers this year at all. You're not seeing bad plays at the blue line. Sometimes maybe on the rush, they're trying to score off the rush every single time. That can still happen with this team, but you're not seeing the bad turnovers that have gotten Minnesota in trouble maybe 5-6 years ago. So I don't think that's necessarily the easy way to play against Minnesota anymore, is just wait for those and hope those come. You're going to have to get in transition fast when you get those opportunities, but I don't think you can just sit back.
All right. So it's going to be run and gun weekend. Let's go, Vigs. Let's go.
Well, I think the big thing for Minnesota, I'll be watching for this weekend, and you won't be able to watch it on Big Ten Network or Bally's or anything. You're going to have to get the Big Ten Plus streaming network, which you and I both have because we got that 50% off discount code earlier in the year. But you're going to be watching
attention, folks. We had that great 50%. It was awesome.
But you need to be watching for traffic around the net and which players can get to the net and create chaos. Jackson Nelson has been Minnesota's probably best player at creating that traffic and tipping shots. I think there's potential for more players for Minnesota to do that. Jimmy Snuggerud sacrificed himself every once in a while to drive the net and be that guy. Charlie Strobel's been doing that a little bit. So I just think Minnesota needs to have a few more guys to just recognize when they're that F2 player. They're not the F1 with the puck. They're that second player in the zone. Sometimes it's okay just to drive the net, push back the defense, and create some chaos in front of the goalkeepers. Because when you've got goalies like Michigan who maybe aren't as comfortable as they've been over the last couple of years, chaos is good for Minnesota.
Okay. I like the sound of that. As like you said, you mentioned the only TV this weekend is going to be the BTN or B1G Plus package. It will be a Michigan feed. Don't complain about it. That's just how it is. I see with the expansion of the Big Ten and all other sports next season as a sign that we might be getting more of this, Vigs. I know we've spoken with Cappy, and Cappy's like, I don't mind it. I just hope that the production goes up with it, because that's one thing that has been lacking. One thing I don't mind about it is that there's a lot of times there's no commercials. They just freeze on the ice. They'll just show a generic center ice shot during what would be their breaks. And we just get to sit back and not hear some kind of drug being thrown at us for whatever condition you may have. So I do like that part. It's going to be the future, Vigs.
It's going to be the future. If you don't like the commentators, you can always pull up the Varsity Network's podcasting app to listen to Frank and Wally. You can get the iHeart app and get Talk 1130. And if you tune in right, half an hour before puck drop, you'll get the coach's show. I heard Paul Martin was on the pregame show for the Duluth game on Saturday, talking about his player development role with Minnesota and how he's been helping the defense, especially, and kind of help them transition this year with all that extra ice time and try to settle him down a little bit. He had some interesting things when he's talking about Chesley and Rinzel, just trying to have them pick their spots a little bit better, which was interesting to hear from Martin, because he's obviously a guy who did it for a long time in the NHL and not always as the play driver, but as a supporting player. And you have to learn that role as well as you go up levels.
It's going to be a fun weekend, Vigs. Minnesota needs points. Right now, they obviously played less games than everyone else, but they are in last place in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that Big Ten standings looks crazy. I was just thinking about that. Brad Schlossman this week was posting interconference records, and the Big Ten is the top dog right now in college hockey in terms of performing outside their conference. So I think that
about 700 winning percentage.
Yep. So that's really good for Minnesota. I think Big East was next, and then NCHC. So that kind of determines. It kind of determines how many bids your conference can get. If you're at the top of this, like the Big Ten, you have a chance for 4 or 5 teams to get in the tournament. We looked last year as it came down. We're like, everyone had a chance to get in the NCAA tournament. That could be the situation this year as well. And on the flip side, you look at the CCHA, they're towards the bottom there. It's going to be hard for them to get an at-large team. So they're probably going to get their auto bid. And that might be it. That's it. ECAC, kind of the same boat. They might just have their auto bid, maybe 2, depending on who wins their conference tournament. And that's kind of a surprise as well, because it looks like Cornell is going to be pretty decent this year. They swept Minnesota Duluth the other day, and they could be good. Quinnipiac, they're doing all right. So that'll be interesting to see.
What are your thoughts on this weekend? How many points? What's your prediction?
I think we're going to see 5 points for Minnesota this weekend.
Oh.
I feel like one of these games probably can go to overtime. As Minnesota kind of goes through the growing pains of their power play, finding that consistency and trying to get players to get that traffic to the net. I think Michigan's going to be a hungry team this weekend after getting handled by the Badgers last weekend. They've got to get their season back on track. So one of those games could be real motivational for them. But I still see Minnesota as the deeper, more talented, more consistent team between these two.
They've been doing real well in Michigan lately, even when they've had other players out. I think, last year was a sweep there. I'm going with it, Beeks. I just got to sweep in Yost. Now, back at Mariucci would be different, because for some reason Michigan just plays super well at Mariucci. But I'm thinking this weekend in Yost, it's going to be a good one for the Gophers.
Yeah, this is always an interesting matchup.
Yeah. Always so fun. I need to get out there sometime. One of these days, we road trip the Yost, Vigs.
Well, we did the road trip to North Dakota this year. Maybe it's Yost next year. It's a historic building. It's a cool campus.
Or maybe Duluth next year.
I mean, Duluth is definitely happening next year. I mean, that's a no-brainer. 2 games in Duluth, I'm up there.
I've been loving your 6-point stuff.
Yeah, 6 thoughts is the Gophers chase that 6th championship. They've been stuck on 5 here for a while, and they've had a lot of chances. This program, I think, is building towards that. It's not as turnkey as the program was in shape last year. So it's going to take a while for this team to kind of find their stride. Bob always says, he wants to have this team playing well coming out of Christmas break. And you're going to go through growing pains until you get there. We should have a 6 thoughts probably posted next week. We're taking a week off with the team on the road here. But next week, you'll see some 6 thoughts. And I've got a little something coming up. Who are the blue bloods of college hockey right now? And if you look at their performance over the last decade, who's really the best? Has there been any change in the last couple of years? So look for that.
Interesting. That's kind of obviously Duluth was in the last decade. Denver's always been solid.
BC and BU are coming back right now.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's coming back. Minnesota's coming back. Michigan's coming back.
Huh? Interesting thought. All right. You got anything else for me?
And of course, I'm digging into schedules for Minnesota. So hopefully I'll have something by next week talking about scheduling agreements and what things are looking like for Minnesota. Bob's starting to get those contracts finalized. Now is about the time of year where they start to get those things ironed out.
All right, sounds good, Vigs. And that's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast. We'll be back next week to recap the series against Michigan and preview the series with Notre Dame. For those of you watching live, stay tuned for a bit of overtime. For the rest of you, we will catch you next week on the GPL podcast. And what do we have there today, Vigs?
Well, we've got something from Michigan, and this is one of the Rob Scheel GPL Podcast Beer of the Week donations. It's a Canadian breakfast stout from Founders. So it's a Imperial Stout brewed with chocolate and coffee. KBS, Kentucky Breakfast Stout, is kind of a big thing for Founders. So this is a Canadian because they add some maple syrup bourbon barrels to the process. So we got a Michigan beer. So drink your enemies. This is from 2018. It's 11.6%. So dark as the night. Good little head here. Got my University of Minnesota Golf Club 4-ball champions glass tonight as I put the golf season to bed this weekend. Cheers.
Ooh, there you go. Beer of the week, folks.
And no Mountie on there. Yeah, 2018. So
he drank too many of those, was thrown off.
I suppose that's what happens if you're a Mountie who drinks 11.8% Imperial Stouts. Yeah. OT.
Duluth was still fun, but it was just a little. I just thought it was a little dead in Canal Park.
Kind of like the hockey team. They've had a tough little stretch here. I can't believe Minnesota hasn't swept there since 2014. Did you see that I posted that?
Yeah. I think, yeah.
I mean, that's a long time.
I was there for it. Somebody. I mean, I've got it in my notes somewhere.
Yeah, the record against Duluth, going back to the breakup of the WCHA, Bulldogs are now 13, 4, and 3 in the last 10 years.
Gosh, I've got some kind of notes on this of games I have seen in Duluth. What did I do with it? See if I can find it here. Oh, wow. In games that I have been there now, I have seen, let me see, I've seen 17 games in Duluth since 2003, 2004. 17 games. They are 6, 6, and 5. And the last time I saw a swept there was 2011, 2012, 5-4 overtime win and a 5-4 victory. And then I didn't go there until you and I went in 2017.
See, Jupe?
Yeah.
Do you know how to handle the commenters? I accidentally put Puck Hound in a timeout, and I meant to highlight the comment instead.
Oh.
Do you know how to undo putting someone in timeout? I mean, I wanted him to feel shame by calling him out publicly for his comment, but somehow I banned him. Can you unban someone?
Don't know.
Sorry, Puck Hound.
Kick something now. Timeout cannot be undone. Okay, hold on. I'm wondering if I could do something in YouTube though.
Sorry,
Uno
Steve.
momento.
Sorry, everyone. I'm only 2 steps. I probably blame the vaccines more than I blame the Canadian breakfast stout. I don't know if this is FDA recommended to have an imperial stout after getting vaccinated, but might be, a 30-minute OT, 45-minute OT. We'll see.
Unlock YouTube.
So I feel like it should be a timeout, not a ban. Right?
Let me see here.
While Jupe does this, are there any questions from the chat? We got almost 40 people. It could have been more if I wouldn't have banned somebody, but
Oh boy, Viggs. I'm not sure there's much I can do right now.
all right. Well, he's just going to serve his penalty.
What was the comment?
Huh? It was
What
about
was
my
the
golf.
comment?
It was about my golf game. I'm not a very solid driver of the golf ball. Let's put it that way. It's not the strength of my game. I've been working on it with the ripstick and Luke Benoit to try to aid my golf game. Chris Eckes has been impressed with some of my numbers that I've been able to put on the launch monitors. But, it's getting better. But my strength is my putting, my short game, my approach shots, not off the tee. It's been a struggle for me for a decade plus. But I'm a very good 4-ball player. Very good at 4-ball.
The last time they swept there was 2013, 14 or 14, 15 or something like that.
2011, when Nate Condon and Kyle Rao and Nate Schmidt and Nick Bugstad filled up.
Okay, so that is what I have. So it's a 2011-2012 season, a 5-4 overtime win and a 5-4 win.
Yep. And Run with the Dogs called out that there was a waved off icing in that game too, which allowed the Gophers to sweep. She was blaming the officials.
Shocking
That she would call out the officials. She would call out the officials for that.
I had somebody tell me that I needed to tell her to F off this weekend just out of nowhere because she's that kind of person.
I think around that era, she actually gave me a ticket once to go to the game. So always a sweetheart in my book. She's a passionate fan. Fan is short for fanatics. That's what everyone is.
How are the Duluth fans? The people. Drunk hockey guy's not there anymore, so maybe it's a little better.
So that's a plus.
I asked some people; they didn't know he disappeared. He's all with the kids' hockey or something. I don't know. Maybe he still goes, but I haven't seen him at a Minnesota or Duluth game. And
he's got to clean up his image.
He needed to after some things he said about me after my divorce. Jackwagon.
Yeah, we can chirp each other. Just try to keep it not too personal.
I just noticed I got a text from somebody the person I was trying to explain that shootout meant nothing texted me. This person's blaming the alcohol. I don't blame him. I'm like, no, it means nothing.
It doesn't mean nothing, but the overtime means more than it used to. They changed it. It used to be like a 55-45. And
Yeah,
now
66-33.
Yeah,
Or
66-33.
60-40 or something like that.
So the overtime means more, and wins on the road mean a little bit more. Oh, he's free now. Good for him.
Wait, is he though?
Yep.
Is that the same one?
That's same one, I think.
Oh,
I don't think he'd be able to post. He's back. He served his time.
Let's see, what does it say? So you did put user in timeout. You didn't ban user and delete the comments.
Yeah, I gave him a 5-minute major for criticizing my.
Because
my
we have no
golf.
way to fix. I might be able to do it in somewhere within the actual broadcast. Let's go to that. Probably. I don't want to do that. I feel shame. I don't know. No. So the couch comes tomorrow. It's coming together.
It's a big day. Yeah, I mean the podcast studio is coming a long way for you. You're decorating the light.
Gator, I think I just switched it because the way you pronounce it.
You had some people calling you Jupp. Yeah, Jumper.
I just
win for the Jumper.
It's just I don't know. I'll go back. I go back and forth. Oh yeah, so the studio is coming together. Let's get that weird background there. Let's go back to the old GPL background here. Got a bunch of pictures and stuff just kind of leaning up against one because I'm not sure exactly where the couch is going to be, with this and everything else here. So, but it's coming tomorrow. I've got one piece. I've got the ottomans sitting over here. You can see this little thing in dark color there. So that piece is coming. It's like a sectional that you kind of put together. I do like the lighting. I'd like to get some more lights. Let's put some color up on the walls or something. I was actually on Amazon looking for lighting right as you jumped on StreamYard. I heard the blip. I'm like, oh, time to do the show.
There you go.
So yeah, it's been a fun project. And
yeah, I've been taking a pause on my basement finishing, but I think it's gonna have to speed up here pretty soon. I've got an 11-year-old who wants to start doing some sleepovers. I need some more space in the house, so that's it's gonna be the winter project. Is get started on that. It's gonna have to be a cleaning process. I've somehow acquired a lot of stuff over the last decade.
Yeah,
but I've got the office and the bathroom. Those are good starts. It's just going to be a big open space. Let the kids run wild.
I need to do the bathroom next. The door that's on the bathroom, it was put in with no space on each side. So they just squeezed it in there. And of course, it's expanded since then. So now it doesn't even close. So I need to pull it out, put in a slightly smaller door so there's room for expansion and whatnot. And just redo that whole area. But then the room that's just on the other side of this wall that's right in front of me, completely old school. I mean, wood paneling and everything. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so let's bring it back to some hockey talk. Recruiting is always like the dark art of college hockey. All the coaches talk about it being like the lifeblood of a program is recruiting. I think this is an interesting transition for Minnesota right now, getting these 20-year-old commits.
Okay.
Like Falloon is a center. Paulson, center. Both going to be 20. Both have this kind of reputation as 200-foot players. You look at Minnesota next year, they're going to lose Jackson Nelson. Aaron Huglin has been a decent center, but I don't know how impactful he's been. I always feel like he can kind of drive play, but he's not creating a lot of offense, so you don't really know what you have there. Jimmy Clark's looked pretty good as a center, But other than that, you're kind of wondering, does Oliver Moore stick around? Is he better at wing? Because Bob's kind of played him back and forth here so far.
Yeah.
So I feel like they need some reliable players. Because when you played Wisconsin and they had Fitzgerald and Cillier, those are responsible 200-foot centers who play really good hockey on top of the puck. They know how to forecheck. They know how to back check. They're going to get a paycheck someday.
Yeah.
Bob needs a couple guys like that. I think that's what he's doing with some of these players. Hayden Reed was another player that they kind of flipped, who seems like one of those hardworking defensive players who's growing his game quite a bit. So I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen there. He's obviously still got some of the real high-end players coming, with the LJ Mooney, Maceo Phillips, Matthew Grimes. Those are the players you expect to be at Minnesota. But these other commits lately that they're bringing in are bigger players. They're heavier players, and they've all played like 3 years of junior.
You and I were talking about this Friday night. They do have a third paid assistant now, don't they?
Yeah, Potter's getting paid as the goalie coach. So they've hired him on. I don't think it's a full-time job, full-time salary for him. And I still can't quite figure out Paul Martin's thing. Because he can't be one of the hockey coaches, but yet he was on the bench this last weekend with Steve Miller sick. So I'm not sure how that's exactly working. He can't really be a coach, but he can do some player development stuff and do some video work. I'm still going to have to figure this out and figure how Minnesota is making this happen, because we all know Minnesota has the best compliance department in the country in terms of being strict. So we'll see.
To say the least.
Yeah. Hey, there's a reason why you don't see the Gophers announcing their NLIs until every T is crossed and I is dotted, because they are on top of that.
I wonder if I can.
Yeah, but Falloon's he's not Patrick Falloon. He's a St. Cloud kid, friends with Max Rudd, Mac Motzko, acquaintance, and everybody and stuff. And so probably a good depth player for Minnesota, because you need players who can be in that bottom 6 per se, even though coaches don't really like to say it that way. Yeah, but you need them to accept that role and play hard there. And I think that was probably a concern for the Gophers last year. I mean, the Gophers last year played 3 lines a lot. Like, they did not have a 4th line that they could rely on. I mean, that's kind of how it's going to go. I saw him and Potter walking out today, and I was kind of like, should I grab Paul today and really, corner him and find out what this whole thing's about? Or should I grab Tom McGinnis and be like, hey?
Yeah, because they were both on the bench in the second period or last, Friday night. Slarks didn't have anybody in the photo box at the second period. I was in there, so I actually sent him a couple of photos of Martin and Potter, and because we've had Martin on the bench, Potter never been on the bench.
Yeah, so
I had to get some photos of him being on the bench for the school.
Did you notice what he was doing during the game? What he was doing back there?
There's glass between me, so I have to kind of go around the glass to do anything.
Yeah.
A funny thing did happen though, because there is a good foot and a half that I can kind of reach into the bench if I wanted to. So I'm sitting there. It's it's a stoppage. Mr. Fish, he just goes, "Hey, how's it going tonight?" I'm like, it's going pretty good. He goes, "You get any good photos?" I'm not doing so bad. And then he goes, well, then I told him, I got a great one of Strobel when he got his first goal last weekend, and how he's screaming and stuff like that. He goes, yeah, he loves the camera. And that was about it. It was just odd.
That's funny.
But he's just that kind of kid though. Easy going, just a great kid.
Well, I thought it was funny. He did media the other day. I think I brought this up. He's like comes in with a cup of coffee and it's like the full mug, like the Pride on Ice mug. He's like, "Hey guys, how we doing? Yeah, got my black coffee here, and here to talk some hockey with you. Apparently, so he's funny. Whereas Strobel, very serious, team serious when he came in to do his media.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very very serious attitude.
Well, I think some guys don't know really how to act. They don't know if they should show personality. And Fish just comes in there. He's a little older guy. He's just like, "How's it going, guys?"
East Sider as well. It's kind of funny.
I ran into his mother, and I told his mother that story. She goes, "Yeah, that's my kid."
Yeah, we were talking about when he was the Big Ten like second star of the week or whatever. He's like, "Oh, do you get a lot of texts?" He's like, "I don't really text very much. More of a phone call or a face-to-face kind of guy. I don't do a lot of texting and that social media stuff. That's not for me." So I think he's been pressing when he's been in the games. He wants to chase and close down plays quickly when really he should just use his size and escort players into the corner and tattoo them to the glass. That's going to be his strength. It's not break up a play and start transition. It's slow play it, keep him away from the middle of the ice, be physical in the corner, and then win it. He shouldn't be winning one-on-ones at the top of the circles at the dot. He should be winning at the bottom of the circle to the corner. And I think he'll figure that out. I think the pace of play is always something big. I think against Michigan last year, he got caught taking the cheese, going to the outside. You just hope he gets that experience and maturity, and that becomes part of his game. I think if you go look
part of that last year is that he just hadn't played much either, and then he was kind of thrown in. This is a little different this year. I think it's nice that he can actually have a chance to learn from his mistakes and to be better because of it. Because when you only play, when all of a sudden guys are gone for the Olympics or whatever, it's tough to get into a rhythm and just kind of get it all together.
Definitely felt like last year with those kind of bottom lineup guys, they had very short leashes. Did you get that sense last year?
Yeah.
It's just kind of like if you got in trouble, okay, we're going to play Faber, Johnson, Lacombe, Kester, Moore. And that's it. That's how we're going to get through it. Lamb, Strobel, Pino, if you run into trouble, Middlestat, we're just going to go 3 lines. Like they didn't get through that phase last year to have the depth. And maybe it cost them at the end. They were maybe a little bit of a tired team against Quinnipiac when the pressure got ramped up. It's just one game, 30 minutes of hockey. But maybe that's why we're seeing these older players getting recruited. Maybe right now the leash is longer with these guys to let them get this experience and develop. Because I think Bob's been more patient with that fourth line group so far this year, and he's gotten more into mixing up the lines rather than shortening the bench. So easier to do in non-conference than conference. Who knows what will happen against Michigan? He might just like batten down the hatches and be like, "We're getting 6 points this weekend, boys. Whatever it takes."
I'm fine with that because they have 0 points.
Well, I mean, it's a short game or a long game. Like I had someone slip into my DMs on Saturday. Like, why is Oliver Moore taking this key face-off on the power play? Why isn't Jackson Nelson taking that draw? And my point is, Oliver Moore, if you want him to stay and develop, needs to learn how to win those draws.
They were getting killed on face-offs on
But
Saturday.
You know what? Late in the game, Oliver Moore got another chance to win those draws, and he won it. Okay. He lost the first one, but he won the second one. And so maybe that's a growth.
They were getting beat 2-1 for a majority.
Well, the Bulldogs got smoked on draws on Friday. Like, I can't remember what it was, but it was not close. It was like 40-20 or something like that on Friday. So I'm sure Sandelin said, "Hey, we need to be a little more intense." Because he basically said they went through the motions on Friday.
Yeah, it's tougher. It's tougher for me when I'm shooting the game to notice those things. But when I'm sitting in the seat on Saturday, just kind of chilling, I can notice those things that you tell me to watch for. I'm just like going, geez, they lost a lot of faceoffs. And sure enough, I brought up the thing. It was like 33-16 at the time. Like going, oh man.
It makes a big difference. If you get beat that badly, all of a sudden every shift you spend 25, 30 seconds playing defense. And then you got to have the discipline to get off and give the next line on a chance to get the momentum back. That'll be important. I think one thing with Michigan this weekend is I don't know if they have as much experience at center as they've had in the past.
Yeah.
I was going to look at how they did against Wisconsin because I would think Fitzgerald and Cillier would have won a lot of draws. So Michigan went 26.
What was the controversy?
There was a coach's review that Michigan did.
Mm-hmm.
And they got a minor penalty because it wasn't a worthy review because they'd already lost their timeout. So they challenged it, and then they went a minor penalty, and then they gave up the goal.
So what did they challenge at the time? Were they leading, or was it tied, or something like that?
It was tied.
Okay,
it was tied. So I heard Derek Schooley say, "You know what? Timeouts don't really mean anything anyway, and the games are so long with all these reviews. Let's just say if you get it wrong, you have to get a penalty, like in the NHL." But yeah, on Saturday, Michigan got beat 38-28 in the draws. So Wisconsin really took advantage. Cillier went 17-7 on the night. I'm sure a bunch of those were important draws. So if you can, I think we'll see Jackson Nelson take a lot of draws this weekend. Okay, there you go. Disallowed goal. I think that's right.
I could see where they'd do that.
Goals are pretty important in a tie game.
True. So they had disallowed goal, and then Wisconsin scores on the following power play when they challenged it. So, young coach.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is an important year for Naurato in Michigan, because I think he's a good skill coach. But is he a guy that can lead a program and be a discipline coach? Because remember, Michigan, the thing that held them back last year was discipline. Guys doing too much with the puck, taking long shifts, taking bad penalties.
I don't know.
I guess I need to really educate myself better on what happened. I just know it was controversial. But notice I didn't put Puckhound in timeout. Very accurate there.
Oh boy. We'll now be on the student broadcast this week. That's right. He was on it last year. But it wasn't the Minnesota series. It was another one.
Yeah, I think it was a different series.
I think I would just happen to be watching it.
Because I think we talked to Connor about it. Because we had Connor Eargard on the show.
Yeah, that's right.
We chatted through that whole process.
Yeah, because I was using my B1G Plus, watching the game, and I'm like, what the hell is Mel doing there?
I don't know what Mel's up to this year. I haven't gotten my update. No Jess Myers in Ann Arbor this weekend either, so it's going to be kind of a quiet media presence for Minnesota.
Jess is going to miss 3 games in a row.
I know Bob's going to give him a hard time about this, isn't he? Or maybe not. Maybe Bob will just take it in stride.
I think Bob might like it. He'll go out there Saturday or either night. Oh, nobody's here?
Scott, here's my quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing I do like about the women's program Frost might not have money there, but they do a video part where he just kind of describes how the game went, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't mind seeing Minnesota do that when there's no media on the road. I just got to do a quick, minute, 2 minute, just have, Motzko do what a lot of times he does at the beginning of a news conference anyway. Just kind of says, well, we didn't play well. We did play well. We did this right. We did this wrong. I do like how the Frosty does that for the women's team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he'll still do the Wally and Frank post-game radio. So if you're listening to the varsity or the iHeart, it's a good way to get some perspective from Bob. Oftentimes when I go down to do availability after the games, I'll listen to what Bob has already said to Frank and Wally.
And hear what he's going to say, see if he uses the same thing.
He typically covers a lot of the same topics.
Exactly.
But if I've heard it once, I can usually ask a follow-up that's somewhat helpful. So I can be ready.
Follow-up.
The old follow-up, as we talked about with Brad Schlossman up at Grand Forks. That's like 200 level reporting is when you can ask follow-up questions. You're not just firing off your one-shot questions and going with it.
Let me see. I've got that too.
Yeah, no discipline for the Wisconsin player for the Hallam hit. It's kind of a weird one because he comes in, I think, hip first, and then just it's a clip collision. And Hallam was just in a bad spot. I think Hallam's one of those guys who kind of tried to sidestep it a little bit.
So here's Schloss kind of holding court there.
He gets the first 10 questions.
He does. And then you and Jess were there, waiting to get something after the after that series. So
then we had Gunnar down there asking the 90-second question at one point. Yep.
It's kind of a wide angle. So yeah, there's the Goon. Good times in Grand Forks right there.
Yeah, what do we have for guests coming up? I thought
we got no one next week. You think the Kinger would come on?
Maybe next Kinger will come on. He's been pretty busy. I don't know if anybody's checking out the Pull Tab Sports website, but they're doing all kinds of junior stuff. Mm-hmm. I know he's been doing some MLS stuff. I mean, it's a growing brand. I don't know if you listen to the Saturday morning coming down, but he's got that going on. Sunday morning coming down.
Yes.
Talking about Saturday night coming down on Sunday.
I haven't had the chance to watch or listen as much lately. I have a hard time getting any other podcasts in lately. It's just, I'm always so worried about this one.
I mean, clearly this is the one that if you have to cut the list, this has got to be number one.
I don't know.
You can probably cut out the Wild podcast.
Well, we've got Pat Micheletti set up for our November 22nd, which will be our 250th show.
And we're going an hour early, which I instantly regret because I've got hockey practice that night, and then I got to scramble. And coming in hot.
Pat is giving us a hard time constantly. It's too late. I can't. It's 9:30. I wish I could stay up for it. Oh, are you about to click the same thing I am? Time for Deutsch to be on?
I got some commentary from Deutsch today as well.
Really?
Because the university had an RFP out for their equipment provider. And 5 years ago, they switched from Bauer to CCM. CCM was pretty excited to have the job.
Okay.
And they did not understand the restrictions of working with a college hockey program at the time. Like, you just can't have all the players wearing the gear and, like, promoting it yet. So it was very uncomfortable for Brian to be the one person who's like, do not get us in trouble. And no one was helping him. Like, no one was helping him, like, hold the line. And he's just like, Tom, you need to step in, or Bob, you need to step in, or Rabs, or someone tell the CCM rep he can't do this. But they all survived. Grumpy Deutsch was just the grumpy one, holding the rules, holding everybody accountable.
He would be a good guest.
He would have some great stories. You know, when you're the SID, you're
But
the
is he
behind
far
the
enough away
scenes.
from the program that he could tell the stories?
I mean, maybe it's getting close.
Yeah. We should just have him come to the house here. We'll all sit on the couch and have a podcast here.
Or maybe we'll do it in the Pull Tab Sports studio.
Ooh. We could maybe pull that off. I wonder if we could probably pull off a live show there too, couldn't we?
Yeah. Do people want a live show sometime somewhere? Would that be interesting for people? Like if we did a pregame show or something? I don't know. Thursday night show somewhere.
It's tough to do a show like in a bar or something like that because you need some kind of sound system to be able to get our stuff out.
I know my buddies over at Gopher Illustrated have done a couple at Stubborn Herbs, and they did one at Able Brewing, and so we've got some assistants out there that could probably help us learn the ropes.
Yeah.
So I know we gotta do some research. It might be good at the end of the season when I'm not coaching hockey every night or every other night. That takes up some time.
You think?
Yeah, I've got a practice tomorrow night. I've got 2 mite practices this weekend. I've got 2 games this weekend for the Squirt Squad. I'm trying to figure out if I can get FERTA fundraising going for the Minneapolis Titans. So we'll see. This freeze-dried candy stuff has got my mind going. I want to get some of that.
Really?
So I hear it's the thing. I hear it's a good thing. So
interesting.
Yep.
Take advantage. Use those sponsors. I like hearing that, Biggs. Get the FERTA going for you guys.
I gotta bring some other people on board though for it to work out. So we'll see. I'm working on it. Working hard. You might see a promo code at some point to support youth hockey in North and Northeast Minneapolis. But yeah, I think a pregame show could be good. So
fan segment 100% pre-post shows. Yeah, it's we did it in Tampa. We obviously a couple of little post-game things. We've done some stuff in the past. We did that live broadcast, for the entire Alaska Anchorage game once, really late at night.
I was not a part of that one.
Oh, that was a lot of drinking.
I could definitely see us doing something at March for the Michigan series, or something like that, or like when the Big Ten tournament gets kicking off. I could see us doing.
I don't know. We might be in Madison for that.
I know. Could be a perfect fit then. Maybe the Madison.com. Wisconsin State Journal has some equipment for us.
Maybe.
Or maybe it's just Todd's MacBook.
I got the MacBook too, and I've got the camera. I can actually aim it here and turn it all over the place. I get so close to my monitor, you can see the monitor, and there's V's. It's actually over on the side of my monitor now. Of course, now the color's going to get all weird. I hate that damn thing.
Just got to spend more money on it. Make it better.
Yeah, that's when you spend more money. Ooh, temperature. There we go.
All right. What else Gopher hockey should we chat about? As I have the last third of my beer, which is delicious, by the way.
And I'm getting tired too. So
if you see this out and about, I highly recommend it. It's kind of a sweeter imperial stout. It's not so bitter. Like sometimes it's a bitter stouty taste. This one's kind of sweet with the maple syrup and the bourbon. It's pretty delicious. It's probably good for my vaccination to have a little alcohol in there.
The Hockey House piece. Oh, they haven't. I remember that was an MSC, or even I think it might have been partially Fox Sports North, where they would go into one of the houses, the hockey houses, and see who's the cook, who's the clean one, and all that other stuff.
I wanted to do something more like when they went to see Livonia and Jackson Nelson on the farm. I was expecting like a Yellowstone kind of piece with them ranching and handling the cattle and going to the bunkhouse.
All the boys to work.
All the boys in the bunkhouse playing cards. Yeah, we haven't uncovered what the team dynamics are like. Last year, a lot of Catan. The board game was the big thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see. They're still forming. We're still in that forming stage of team building. Biggest bust so far. Oh boy. I mean, I heard Bob pumping the tires on Pino right from the start. I'm not seeing much from him yet.
Nothing.
And I just think he's going to have a hard time seeing consistent ice time unless he gets I think it's not an ability thing with him. It might be a confidence piece because I feel like he gets into the point where he defers to his line mates or defers to somebody else. Like, I'm not going to be the one, so how can I fit everybody else? And I think some of the things you're seeing with Strobel right now is he's like, okay, I'm going to do what I do well. I'm going to drive the net. I'm going to go to the corners. Like, that's going to be where I can make my impact on the ice. I don't know what Pino's impact is right now. Like, what is it that he does really well? I don't know yet. I'm sure there are things. Like, I'm sure somebody who knows him more than I do, other than his Gopher hockey experience, what is he really good at? I don't know. Strobel, I think he's a hard, heavy player. I think he's got some nice vision for plays below the dots. We'll see. Jimmy Clark is my biggest surprise, by the way. Sloth. Jimmy Clark he gets it. He knows what to do. It's impressive for him, especially considering he was supposed to be in Green Bay this year.
Any word on Mankato, St. Cloud?
Not yet.
Still you're investigating. Yeah.
I heard a rumor that Bob is kind of not interested in going to St. Cloud. I think just with the MAC scar tissue, it's just not
I
a good place. Not a good place for him to go and spend a lot of time. It's really hard on him, that piece of history in that relationship. I think we're more likely to see him play Minnesota State, Bemidji, St. Thomas the next couple of years here.
Oh boy.
Well, we'll see. I'm digging in.
Here come the complaints. I already said that St. Cloud's going to be dead in 5 to 10 years.
Maybe they'll never play again. Probably not, but.
All right, Viggs, I'm tired. Gonna put this to bed, folks.
Okay. Well, enjoy the games this weekend.
Yeah.
Should be fun, even
or
though
listening
they're on
to
the
Frank
streaming.
Wally.
Yeah.
Because I think they're going to get a lot of listeners this weekend.
And they'll enjoy it.
They will enjoy it. All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Stay out of trouble.